Welcome to indie-mation conversation.
Oh no!
Where do things go? There. Oh, there we are. Now, for a second there, I had an identity crisis. I didn't know who I was without my lower third.
Look at my phone. Just tells me that we're live right now.
That's exciting.
So
your phone knows you so well.
Thank you, phone. Thank you, Siri.
Oh, my phone just did the same. All right, so let's do this intro deal.
Indie-mation.
Animation.
Indie-mation. Conversation.
Talking about movie pictures and cartoons and whatnot. Welcome, Jim Lujan.
Hello.
So, what are we talking about today?
The primaries, Democratic primaries, for an hour and a half. No.
Yes.
We're talking about writing dialogue. Oh, by the way, did you notice the first time you put it up, you spelled writing wrong, ironically.
I did actually notice that, which is why it's now spelled correctly.
It's not about spelling movies. It's about writing animation.
I wanted to come up with some reason that I spelled it wrong, that, part of the editing process of writing dialogue is to ensure, but really is just, I am a terrible speller.
That's okay. Those who cannot spell teach spelling.
Right. That's why I teach spelling.
So, Cory, why do you want to talk about writing? And this is not a setup question, but why do you want to talk about writing animation?
Well, I think you are good at it and I am bad at it. So
the end. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. Good night.
So just go watch all Jim's stuff and ignore mine. So we'll see you.
Great.
No, I think I'm out of practice. I've done a lot of writing in the past, but as my career has shifted, I've moved into teaching at a university level, and now I'm finding that I am over-explaining things in the process of writing, and so I've done some story writing recently. And I find it's not really conversational, and I'm fighting that urge to have characters find excuses to just world build out loud rather than have a normal conversation.
Yeah.
And so and I've just heard you talk about recording dialogue and how there's in the description of this video, I kind of said there's some where you've got, you write it down and that's great. And then there's others where you're recording it and you hear the actor say it and you're like, oh, now let's say it like this. And I've done that in a lot of situations. And so I just kind of wanted to discuss just a little bit of process and maybe some pitfalls and tips and tricks or whatever. Mainly this is how I workshop stuff when I'm struggling with things is I go find other people who do it better than me, and I just bug them until they tell me all their secrets. So
the secret is edit, cut. That's the secret. Because there's so much you want to say that if you say it, when you say it, it could sound very, and when I say you, everybody out there, I specifically mean Cory only. Yeah. No, when I say you, I mean the audience, you, not me, because I'm perfect, but but it's about cutting those very precious words, cutting, there's things you want to say. There's points you want to get across. If you literally say those points, you got to remember it's animation. It's about cool looking pictures, not just the words, which is actually a good problem to have, Cory, because a lot of times people do the opposite. They have the visual, but they don't have the writing. So,
yeah. And I this is the first time in animation that I'm attempting to do a very dialogue heavy story. I typically either have very few words or kind of a Charlie Brown's Parents situation where if somebody's talking, you get the idea through the visuals, not necessarily through the sound. And
think about this. Think about this. The audience is a 12-year-old boy, and you are the comic book. Now, some 12-year-old boys like really dialogue-heavy comic books, but they're 1 in 1,000. They really want explosions and bang pow and boobs. So you need to put boobs and explosions into your animations, Cory.
Okay. I'll make sure that happens.
Yeah. So and you need to be very sparse as you can be with the dialogue. That's a good challenge too, because you might have this huge point that you want to get over to the audience. I would say try to almost overestimate your audience. You know what I mean? Like just expect them to catch on without giving them too many clues. I mean, because you'll probably, by doing that, in a weird way, you'll meet at a happy medium where the audience is catching on and you're actually having to write less dialogue.
Right. And I get that from comic books, right? And so in a lot of the comics that I've done, I'm going to leave a lot of the world building. I'm going to leave a lot of the story to the visuals because it's a visual medium. And so I feel like the first comic I did, I had a character who I got so bored with what he was saying as I was creating it that I literally just drone striked the conversation they were having. I just had armored harpies come in and just kill everyone that was talking because I was so bored. they were just like talking for so long. It was like 6 pages of talking heads, and I was like, oh, this is awful. And so
you should do that. Every movie should have that. That should be your signature.
When I was in high school, I literally said, if I start making movies, I'm going to make the people fall in love with the character, and then I'm going to kill him in the first 5 minutes and no explanation. And then I feel like, Game of Thrones kind of stole my thunder years later and much better than I would have ever had.
Well, I know everyone's different, but I found that when I write a lot of dialogue, I go back and read it later, and it doesn't flow or even work as well as when I just speak the dialogue to somebody or just do notes. And that's me personally. But I know there's people that are great writers and write every line and every word's precious. But you got to find what works for you. And the way you find what works for you is your audience. Your audience is, if you can find an honest critic or an honest friend, then they'll give you good advice. I'm your honest friend. So.
And there's nothing like believing somebody who tells you that they're honest. So that's very believable. And
I have some real estate that I want to sell you to.
Right. But yeah, no. And I've also found along those lines, Scott Circlin just did a video on dialogue in his Making Comics 101 video series, but also in my other show, the 48-hour art check, I had some dialogue that it flowed really easily. And I feel like when stuff flows really easily, your brain gives you this false sense that it's good because it wasn't a struggle. And then I was like, oh, cool. Like that script came fast. And I decided to test something out. And so I read it on the air with Josh.
I heard that episode.
That dialogue was so bad. But the nice thing about it was getting it out of my head onto the paper was good, but then hearing it, I think, is better. And so I've done tests. I'm a auditory kinesthetic learner, which means that I have to be manipulating things with my hands while I hear information to retain information. And you can tell whether you're an auditory learner if you are trying to remember a telephone number and you have to say it out loud, because you can't just say it in your mind. You have to say it out loud because you're actually processing things through your ears that way. And so for
somebody to learn something, they have to say it out loud to repeat it to themselves. Yes. So that I get it. Now I get it.
But with the dialogue, what I'm saying is, especially for animation, that's how people are going to experience your dialogue, is they are going to hear actors and actresses say it. And so if you're just reading it in your mind, I don't think you get the same effect. And so I've found in the last few months, as I've been doing this, that I'll just read it out loud to myself, or read it out loud to other people, or have other people read it out loud to me. And then when I'm hearing it, I can refine it. I can tweak it.
You can also record it on your phone and then listen to it back a day later or later on and get a fresher view.
Interesting.
Everything that I've learned from experimentation, live experimentation on films.
Uh-huh.
I don't know. To me, it's a different skill set to be able to write well on paper and have that translate into somebody acting those lines out. Oftentimes, you get a good actor. Deacon Burns, for example, from Counterclockwise, he's done many voices for me, and I've given him lines, and he's ad-libbed on top of the lines, and it's better than what I wrote. So it depends on what type of filmmaker you are, or what type of an animator, what type of film you want to make. It's very, I tend to be more of an ad-libbing animator, like on the, I change things on the fly all the time.
Right.
I'm kind of a whatever works guy, but there's people that are very structured and need that. Those are the people that probably need to edit themselves. The ones that are very structured like that, because they probably have, this is going to be said here, this is going to be said here. And then when it comes time to actually making the film, it's almost like, it's like sports. Like if you have a football play, we're going to do this, and then you realize that they're blocking for the run. They're not defending the pass, but you're like, no, we're a running team. We're going to run. You have to be able to switch it up and change it if that's what's working. But it all comes from showing your stuff to audiences too. So anybody out there, I would definitely recommend showing your stuff to audiences, because that's going to be the truth teller. People either, you can tell when people are being nice when they're like, oh yeah, how did you like my film? It was good. It was good.
Also, if you're able to be there while you're showing it to them, you can see the point when they disengage. You can see the point when they're on the edge of the seat. I've shown stuff to people, and it's really interesting because I know the moment that it got boring, like as soon as everybody's like, oh, or they check their watch, or, they kind of start shifting in their seat or whatever. And so, yeah, I think that's really good too.
For me, usually it's when they're trying to untie the ropes on their hands. That's when I usually
they start taking the broken glass that they've stifled away and shaving the ropes off. Okay, so here's another thing I want to talk about, because I think you and I are kind of on the opposite spectrum when you're talking about planning and flying by the seat of your pants, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we both are on the spectrum, by the way.
Yes, I'm certain. So, but I have a Trello board that is just for assets and things that I need to create. And I start with a script, and then I go to a storyboard, and then I take that storyboard and I turn it into an animatic, and then I take that animatic and I break it up to an asset list that needs to be created, and then I rig those things. And so, like most people, when they see the amount of prep work that I go through to do an animation, are like, wow, that is a lot.
I've seen it, and I'm like, you've done more work in your prep than I do in my final. You want to see my Trello board?
Sure.
This is my Trello board right here. Let's see if we can read it.
It'll focus.
Yeah.
There we go. Okay.
There it is. That's it right there. Yeah. Those are notes. I do notes into my phone, and I'm so lazy that I go, Sari, blah, 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 and she gets them wrong all the time. And then I take those notes and I usually throw them away. I change it up. But yeah, we are, it's funny, Cory, we are like total opposite ends of the spectrum, but I think we're both fascinated with each other's methods. Like I'm fascinated with your method, and I think you're really interested in how I do my stuff.
Yeah. Because I really want to learn from people that are a lot different than me, because we were having a conversation via text earlier in the week. I'll tell you what it's like to be Jim's friend is every once in a while he just says, hey, you know what? You're pretty good. And this is one of those. And I was thinking about it, and I am hardwired to optimize things. I always want to figure out how to tweak and improve and whatever. And that's like one of the big motivating factors. I think that's why I'm in love with animation and illustration, and a lot of this type of visual storytelling is there is no ceiling. There's just you can constantly get better, and you'll never reach a point where you're like, I have mastered this craft. But with that, one of the things that I'm interested in with you, and partially this is dialogue, partially this is just writing, is I want to make sure that I've got a story structure. I really have a reason to work on something. And so for me, not that it has to be important or like world breaking or whatever, but it takes so long to do these projects that I don't want to spend 6 months of my life working on something that like didn't have a point. Cause I did that. When I first got into comics, I did a comic and I spent months and months and months doing all this stuff. And then I realized like, I don't have a story, like I'm just drawing random stuff and trying to fly by the seat of my pants. And so I scrapped all that and it got way better when I was like, let's just take a beat, plan out a story arc. Let's figure out why our characters want to do things. And from there, I don't know if the pendulum has swung too far or not, but I find I do a lot better when I'm like, I need these things to happen. So I'm curious in your process. I think my guess is that you know where things are going to go, but how much of that is plotted out and how much of that is ad lib?
That's a very good, accurate, timely question because I'm doing that right now as we speak. Not literally, but I always know where the story's going to go. I've never started a story and go, oh, I don't know where this is going to end up. I always have an idea where it's going to end up. It's just a matter of how detailed.
Yeah.
I'll take something like All That Glitters. I knew exactly how All That Glitters would end, but there's a lot of middle points that I wasn't sure how it was going to get there.
Yeah.
And even so, there were some people that did characters for me that kind of took off in their own direction a little bit. I wanted to follow that a little bit, but it was a series, so I had that freedom to do that in a series. There's been other things I've done that have been designed to be just a movie, and those could be a series could be more dangerous because you do have all these avenues you can go, and there's no like it's going to be too long or whatever. It's a series. You could do whatever you want. With a movie, you're going to have a time frame. Like it's got to be 30 minutes. It's got to be 40 minutes. And that's why I always know the beginning and the end and a few in between elements. But I don't know. To me, I think it's a little bit like homework if I have everything plotted out to a T. It's funny because if we're going out, I like to know where we're going. I don't like to be like, we'll just go and try to get a table and I don't know, we'll just hang out and do whatever. That's not as fun to me as like, okay, we have a reservation at, 8:00, and then I like that kind of structure in real life, although I'm not a very structured guy. But in creative stuff, not so much. I like having freedom to change and completely scrap stuff in the middle because I know I can finish stuff, and I finish stuff. So I know that it's not a dangerous habit.
Right.
If I kept starting things and stopping them and never finishing, then that would be a terrible habit. But it just happens to be, it's a creative byproduct. It's a creative, creative twitch I have to change things. And nobody knows too. I mean, that's another thing too. I'm not working with this. Okay. Revengeance. I didn't have as much freedom there. I had to write a script, and we did follow the script, but even so, things were changed and thrown away, scrapped, and added, while we were making it a little bit, but not to the point of where I do it on my own. But and it was still fun because I wasn't animating it. It was great. Yeah.
So yeah, and so you mentioned something that's interesting. when you're collaborating, you've got somebody else doing the voice. Do you go in and do you tell them? Because I'll know on all my major characters, I go through and I do a little character sketch. I know what they want. I know what they love. I know what they hate, and I know what they fear, and I know what they think. What they think their goals are. So I have those 5 things in a character sketch, and then I give them a bit of a personality one way or the other, right? And so, do you go in with your voice actors and say, okay, so you're playing this part, and let me set up the scene for you. This is what's happening, and then do you give them any other information, or is it a lot of that organic where you're just like, have fun with it? She's rich and crazy, or kind of do whatever you want. And we'll see where this goes.
It's funny. Everyone that's done a voice for me, I kind of know them really well.
You're grabbing homeless people off the street and saying, "Hey, say this into the microphone."
Oh, you have no vocal cords. Yeah, but so when I work with them, I know what they can do, and that is probably always said when I'm working with somebody doing a voice is, yeah, like that. Yeah, like that. A lot of that. Yeah, like that. And then once you say that, they go, okay, I know what I did. And then they have fun. I don't like to make somebody feel uncomfortable or voice. It's the opposite. You want them to have fun. What's interesting is I find that some people will do better from reading from a script. They want a script to go off of, and they'll try it different ways, and they're very comfortable ad-libbing. Then there's other people reading from a script better if I just say, in your way, say this. Hey, where are you going? And they go, hey, where are you going? And then I say, I like feed them lines literally like that. And they do it in their voice, but they're just mimicking my energy. And I do that about half the time if I can. It's always worked out really well like that. Sarah from Revengeance, she played Lana. We did a Q&A after a screening, and she was in front of a bunch of people. She goes, I want to thank Jim for having me in his cartoon and telling me what to say. Because that's how we recorded her audio. Say this, say that. But there's other people I've just sent scripts to. Like I have a couple of people right now that I'm working with that they're in other parts of the country, and I just sent them scripts. And sometimes I do a little scene breakdown. I'll always have like a shorthand with them too. Like I'll have an inside joke that we might remember this, or it'll be interesting when I work with people I've never worked with before, and people that I just don't know at all, to watch them have tantrums and stuff. But so I'm very flexible, as flexible as I am with myself and having a real loose approach. I'm also adaptable, and I can work with a traditional style if needed. But a lot of times that means throwing the script out, kind of the dialogue script out. And how about you? Have you tried just sort of working off notes instead of script
for dialogue?
Mm-hmm. I know your dialogue is very detailed. Like there's points you want to make.
Yes,
that would be kind of rough. Huh?
I do have. So I mean, this will be the first time that I've done dialogue in animation at any length. But early on in my career, years ago, over a decade ago, when I was making a lot of videos, I would work with a lot of voice actors and voice talent professionally, and I feel like I know, because I would write those scripts. They were like highly technical scripts, like how to defuel an aircraft on an aircraft carrier, and stuff like that. So, and I would know from the script, like, these are the things that the engineers absolutely need to be said this way. And these are the things where I just need to get us this information so that we can move on to the next thing. And so I knew that there were parts of the dialogue that were malleable and parts of the dialogue that were fixed. And I do very similar things, even in comics, when I'm lettering, and I'm like, you know what? I need less words here because I want the word balloon to lead into the next panel in a specific way or whatever. And so I'm still aware of like, this is the salient point in what they're trying to accomplish. And so those two things are kind of how I operate is I'm trying to achieve something in the story. There's a story beat, a character beat. There's a piece of information that I want to foreshadow for later. But I mean, there's a million different ways to get there. And so I do leave a little bit of room to kind of play, but I'm playing within a confined area of we need to get this across and I want it to feel this way. And then sometimes, and this is where I know it's not always great, sometimes I just really fall in love with a specific turn of phrase. And I really want that in there.
That could be fine. I mean, here's an experiment for anyone out there that is interested in trying to write dialogue for a scene or for a movie. Try recording it as an audio play. Just, even if it's a scene, just try to put together. I used to call them Cheech and Chong skits because that's what my early stuff, before I knew even how to animate at all, and I did animatic still cartoons. I synced them up, each shot up with this. I would record on my Tascam 4-track cassette recorder, a little like a Cheech and Chong skit. And I would just, talk to myself, and I had music in the background, and I would mix it all down, and it sounded really good. Like it was in stereo, and the audio was great, and my animation was all crappy, but there was no animation. And but I learned how to put a scene together. I learned how to edit. I learned how to paste stuff. I learned how to make something interesting with no animation. So that taught me the value of pacing in audio and in a performance, the banter, because if you have two characters talking, if it's not timed out right, it's really weird. You could have somebody go, well, we had to shoot him in the eye, and the other guy goes, shoot him in the eye. There's that weird, uncomfortable, So by doing it as an audio play, that script, those words that you have, you learn to phrase things. Even when you're writing, you learn how to phrase things. It's all related, because it's not just on paper. It's not just the words on paper. It's how does that sound conversationally, and you'll also become better at editing yourself too if you do that. Even if you read it to yourself, even if you just practice a little, 30-second scene by yourself. I say this because I did it hundreds of thousands of times when I was doing my own animations. I have lots of like recorded skits that never made it as cartoons. I used to do all my cartoons like that. I used to do them all as audio plays or audio skits first, and then.
Well, I know a lot of shows on TV right now are done that way. I was at Adobe Max a couple of years ago, and some of the guys from Nickelodeon described exactly that situation, and they were breaking down their process and how they're using what is now Animate CC, and he literally said, "Yeah, we do a little radio play. We've got all the dialogue cut, and we've got guys who their job is to sync up the mouths to the dialogue, but then." They build on that as if that's the structure, and then they build visuals on top of it.
You can tell sometimes too.
Yeah, but I know that the other way is also done, and I wonder if this is just an older way of doing it. But I remember seeing like, I don't know where this was, but as a kid, I remember seeing like Hanna-Barbera and a lot of those a lot of those He-Man and, you know, those type of shows, Funimation, that type of stuff, they would animate the whole episode, and then they would bring the voice actors in after it was animated, and they would be sitting in a room watching it, cutting their audio and trying to match it up to the already fixed animation.
Yeah, I could see that happening, but that's tricky.
Oh yeah,
you know? Yeah.
And I mean, that's back in the day when you're drawing every frame.
Yeah, that's no fun. That animation's no fun.
Right. But I remember one of the things that I thought was really interesting is not Disney, because Disney was always like this with full feature films, but when television cartoons, you started to be able to read people's lips. Because it used to be that just like, you know, you had Skeletor and his jaw would just, you know, and whatever, you know, or their mouths would just do whatever. And this is something that you do that I'm stealing, is you have a couple sounds and a couple mouth shapes that go with those sounds. And when you hear that sound, you put that mouth shape on.
Yes, right? Because so, in real life, we only have two shapes of our mouths. In real life, we only have ah and oh, right? Right? Yeah. Okay, that's right. No, I don't know. I do it just because it's good enough. It works. I can't spend all day on a lip sync. But
even that little bit of realism really helps, because here's one of the things that I have in my limited experience with animation. Whenever I'm getting into a new medium, I reverse engineer a ton of stuff. So I do deep dives into things. And here's something that I think is really fascinating. If you want to see how something is animated, turn off the sound. You turn off the sound, and all of a sudden, you start to see all of the little breaks in the character model. You start to see all the little seams and everything. You start to see the timing better of how they're doing that stuff. And they've done a ton of studies on this. I can't remember what this is called, but there's a video of a guy saying the sound ba with a B, and then another video of the same guy saying the sound fa with an F. And interestingly enough, you can put both of those videos up and have the guy just go ba, 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 fa, fa, fa. And when you look back and forth, the sound in your mind changes based on which guy you're looking at. Even though the audio track is exactly the same, you will hear fa when you see the F sound, and you will hear ba when you see the B sound. And so what's actually happening is our brains invent a huge amount of our experience. They just make it up. And so the sound, the video, and the audio put together create an experience that is more than what's actually there. And so by removing one or the other, if you want to hear good dialogue, like we're saying, you need to hear it, and you need to not look at stuff, and you'll hear it. Yeah. Right. But if you need to see how the animation is working, like the sounds actually sell a ton of the animation. And so if you want it to feel like somebody's walking through the woods, we better hear crunching sounds, or it won't really feel like that.
It's also the tone of the actors make a huge difference, because you could have look, and I'll say something right now as an example with no dialogue, and you could tell it's bad acting. If I go, like I've said nothing, but it's like you could tell it's like, okay, there's no heart into it, you know. So that makes a huge difference, the way that actors deliver the dialogue.
Yeah,
you wouldn't give I'm trying to think of it. Okay, you wouldn't give Charles Nelson Riley Chuck Norris dialogue. I mean, I would personally. I totally would in a heartbeat. But like, it's, you know, it's, you don't give Chuck Norris Dame Judi Dench's dialogue, although that's awesome too.
Right. Now I want all of those things to happen.
Yeah, it's gotta fit. It's gotta fit the actor on every level. There's characters that I've given to friends because it's just they're better at it. I call a guy like Tom Racine, you know, He's got a very authoritative voice, but he's also got a really good. He's very versatile. He's got, or Deacon. Deacon's great. I mean, amazing. Deacon Burns has done voices for me. Charlie Rossman, Lisa Copenhaver. The list goes on. And I didn't used to use actors. I specifically started using voice actors because of what they bring to the cartoons. And that is a lot of that has to do with the way they're reading the dialogue, or the way that the dialogue is given to them too. Because I know them really well, and I know what they respond best from. So
yeah.
It's not a one size fit all. A lot of productions are one size fits all, and it's not true, because you got to know the actor, the voice actor, what works if you want certain results.
Yeah.
Have
you seen? There was a Kickstarter years ago. The guys at Double Fine Adventures, up in the Bay Area, they did this Kickstarter for one of their video games, and it took off. And as part of the tier, they're like, if we get this high, we will hire a production company to shoot a documentary on this process. I literally just backed it because Tim Schafer was like, I don't know if we can do it. Either it's going to be amazing, we'll make an awesome game, or you'll have a really cool documentary of us crashing and burning publicly. And I was like, I'm sold right there. But one of the things that was really cool is they brought in Jack Black to do the voice of one of the characters. And there's an entire episode, because they have almost 30 episodes that are 30 to 60 minutes long, from 2-player productions. They did a great job. And there's almost an entire episode on dialogue, and you watch this master, at work, and Tim Schafer is an excellent writer, and he's really funny. But then Jack Black is an excellent actor and is also really funny. And he's like, I'm going to do it like this. Now I'm going to do it like this. Let's try this. And he tried 15 different ways, and then the people in the booth are cracking up. And, but it was really interesting because, Tim wasn't no, that I imagined it different, you suck. Yeah. He's like, let's see what this collaboration brings up. Let's see what happens with this. And so he wrote the dialogue, and I'm sure he had some stuff in mind, but what you're saying is, part of that is the performance, and the words might even change.
It's a big part of it. It's not, you're not working with Siri, you're working with human beings. So when you're writing, when people are writing dialogue, they imagine, I could see Anthony Hopkins reading this line. Then you better tell them to read it like Anthony Hopkins.
Right.
Otherwise, yeah. So it depends on what you're going for. I'm very big on not as much writing dialogue for animation as having a strong idea of what you want to say and how you want to say it.
Yeah.
That's ultimately what it comes down to, because every creator has a different voice and a unique voice. You lovely snowflake.
My voice is pensive confusion. I want people to wonder why they just watched that thing.
Yeah.
What did I just do?
Yeah. My voice is, I accidentally tuned into this channel. Where are the Teletubbies? Yeah. So, by the way, you brought something up earlier. Let's talk a little bit about the day that you had Josh read your script.
Yes.
Because he was such a good sport about it too. Because I could tell about a third of the way through, you were like, oh man, this is not the way I intended it to go.
Right.
Because there was a lot of dialogue, and it was a lot of exposition.
Right.
And you know what? If you have to, if you are asking, did I just get shot? What is that they say? If you hear the shot, it means it didn't hit you.
Right.
Because you don't hear the shot that hits you. The fact that you were recognizing that and are recognizing that means that you are not a bad writer, Corey. It means that you just tried something and it might not have worked as the way you thought it on paper would have worked.
And I've become very comfortable iterating in public. I've become very comfortable being very vulnerable out loud and publicly. And so
you better get careful because you get arrested for iterating in public. I just thought of something too. I gotta mention this too. For people that are wondering about, or should I cut dialogue? Is this too much dialogue? Is this picture Spider-Man fighting a villain in a comic book? Look how much dialogue's there because they didn't have to edit themselves. He's like, ha ha ha, lizard face, catch some flies with that tongue, but I bet you the cat's got your tongue because it just goes on and on and on. And then it's like in the middle of a punch. Like
in the middle of a punch.
And there's another balloon down here saying something else. Oh, next time you're going to hit something besides air, scale, breath, and if Spider-Man did that, if the real Spider-Man did that in real life,
right,
it wouldn't be so pretty. Okay, you can't. It's a different medium, and screenplays are sometimes, if not done correctly, a different medium than they're meant to be. So that's where the self-editing comes in a little bit sometimes, I think.
Well, and I also believe that, and this is of course very self-centered of me coming from the visual side of things. I feel like people who have executed visuals are going to come at this differently than somebody who has never done that, because there's a lot of stuff that can be shown better than it can be said. Mm-hmm. And the same thing that you were saying, like, if you're just like, oh, this is such a great line. Great. What are we looking at though while we're hearing it? Oh, this is a terrible example, but Ayn Rand did her whatever book, right? Mm-hmm. Not The Fountainhead, but the other one, Atlas Shrugged. There is a speech in Atlas Shrugged that is so long that if you were actually to act it out, it would be hours long of reading it. And so to make a movie or a cartoon out of that, like, it's literally just the world listening to this guy rant on the radio for like 4.5 hours of dialogue or whatever. And that was just her just saying, like, I've got an essay that I wrote that I am just going to put in the middle of this story because this is the point of this story. But like, she was writing that, and I don't think a lot of people claim that she's a great writer. A lot of people might agree with her philosophy or whatever, but obviously there's differences. But anyway, she wasn't writing that for visuals. Like,
right.
She's just writing a novel. And so it's different when you're like, I'm writing for animation, I'm writing for comics, I'm writing for TV, I'm writing for film, I'm writing for movies or whatever, right? Is you have to think not only like these are the words that are being heard, but also like, what am I looking at? And if somebody walks into a room and you can show that they love that person without having the person have to have an interior monologue that says, boy, I really love her, right? Mm-hmm. It's going to land better because it's going to feel more authentic. And so a lot of the stuff is like, what point are you trying to get across? And what's the best way to do that? Do you have to say it? And I find when I'm writing my initial scripts, because I tend to go huge and then pare it down and shave it down and shave it down and edit it until it's hopefully distilled into something, But initially I feel like I just describe everything. And then I start to kind of say, okay, like, this could actually be shown, or this could be done in this way, or this could be done in this way. And I think that's why I do storyboards, is because if I can thumbnail it out in, a fat, dry Sharpie in a couple inches, then it's gonna come across.
Do you consider your characters interacting with each other, or do you mostly consider this is the point I want this character to get across?
A little of both. And so I do, there's the type of writing where you're like, I understand the character's motivations. Let's put them in a room and see what happens, what they do. Mm-hmm. I do a little bit of that. But then I also have kind of a character arc. I don't really like the idea of flat characters, and so I've got to get over this because not everybody can be round in your story. But I do want dynamic change. I do want people to grow, and so I do need certain characters to come into conflict or to suffer or to have realizations or those type of things. But yeah, a little of both. I think I think there's times where I need this person to say this because of whatever, but there's other times where it's like, here's the situation, and I've got a character that's got a worldview like this, and a character that's got a worldview like this. How would they talk about this situation?
Yeah. I've learned, one of the things I've learned by being an old man is a lot of times people kind of don't care. They care after the fact. So if you made a cartoon about a bouncing ball going across the screen, they wouldn't watch it going, okay, why not? Why is this bouncing ball going across the screen? Let's talk about it. Like they just go, oh, it's a bouncing ball across the screen. But if you came out and did an interview and said, oh, that bouncing ball across the screen, it's going left to right, and it represents Donald Trump, how he started out on the left and now he's all right. And that's all my statement is. There would be discussions over that, they care after the fact, but when it's going on, they don't kind of care. And I think a lot of energy can be wasted on subtle, and I'm totally guilty of this, but like subtle details that people just go, okay, But
I disagree just a little bit, though.
They care after the fact. When you tell them afterwards, then they go back and they can watch and go, oh, that's why he's limping. But what I'm saying is, yeah, you can give the guy a limp, but don't go, why are they showing that guy limp for 20 minutes? Because the rest of the world that doesn't, all they see is a limping guy for 20 minutes. Right. But you know what I mean? But there could be a reasoning behind it. So you got to be careful. It's like, it's like cooking. If you throw in that one magic ingredient, just the right amount is perfect. But if you go open up the lid and go, it's going to kill it.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I do think on a subliminal level we pick up on things. Though.
Yeah.
So I think one of the best character designs that has ever happened is Hellboy. You look at what Mignola is doing with that, and you have this guy who looks like a demon, but then he, as a character, he was created in hell, brought into the world to end the world. But then he decides that he wants to be good. And so in the character design, he shaves off his own horns. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that is a choice. And then he dresses as much like a person as he can, right? He's wearing an overcoat. He's got a t-shirt on, and he's got a belt, and he's
the horns look like goggles too. He looks like a World War II guy with the goggles. So yeah, it is a great design.
But what I like about it is, even if you don't get the nuance of his inner conflict or whatever, it still works to show that. And so there are levels to that. I like last night I was just doing a deep dive into Mace Windu's purple lightsaber. You can say, oh, that's a cool purple lightsaber, but those that really want to dive deep into the lore of that, there's significant amount of meaning to what's going on. And so I think there is value even during the process, not just after, but during the process. Instinctually, we kind of pick up on those cues, And so when I'm doing character design, I'm trying to think why would this person do this way, or what would they do, or how would they do this? So in Ping Ping Boom, the one I'm working on right now, I've got a character who she kind of likes technology, but the problem is that the super AIs have destroyed the world. And so she's part of an anti-tech kind of rebellion, but she's still building mechanical, things and mechanized armor and all this type of stuff. But she's building it out of pre-1990 cars and pneumatics and stuff like that, so that it doesn't have onboard computers. At
So
no
your challenge is to get the audience to understand this without. No,
Right.
you're never going to show them.
I'm going to show it to them. They're going to
Uh-huh.
see it. But my goal, my rule is I'm never going to have two people have a conversation of like, well, you have that machine over there, but yes, I know, but it doesn't have any onboard computers, right?
So you got to be creative with it then. You got to,
Right.
if
So I
you
wanna-
want the audience to know that at all, yeah, you're going to have to be really
Right.
creative
So
with it.
I want them to, if it bugs them at all, and they think about it for half a second, they'll realize that I've thought about it. And if
Yeah.
it does bug them, it'll just be part of the story, and it'll be a cool Jeep Wagoneer with giant spider legs. So,
And I say this, it's very hypocritical of me to say it, because I mean, I do that all the time too. You know, I'll design a backstory, but I do that admittedly because it's fun.
right.
I totally do it because it's something I enjoy. I like to do that. I enjoy it. And you'll see in my new cartoon, Boom Boom Ping, that's coming out. It's so unique. I'll tell you the whole story later. It has to do with technologies, but I'll tell
So
you.
one of these times we should actually do that, like the shape of water. They like they're I think they're playing tennis or something, and the one dude, he goes and makes a film, and the other guy goes and writes a book, and they never talk to each other after that tennis conversation. It was literally like,
That's how it happened, really?
yeah,
Wow.
yeah. And so he was like, I've got this idea for a story, and the dude was like, that's going to be my next movie. And so they're like, he's like, well, let me tell you the story. So he tells him the story before he wrote the book, and it was just like a conversation they had on the court.
So they were friends.
They were friends, and then they like parted ways and didn't talk to each other for a while. And
Are they still friends?
I think so. I don't know.
I hope, because I had heard some stuff too, but I was like, I hope that's not true. But
I don't know.
oh.
I mean, I'm just going off of like some of the preface in the book kind of described that process, but
Yeah.
I don't know what's happened after that. But it'd be interesting to say, let's do a short. We'll each do one, and we have kind of a basic idea, and then we just don't talk to each other about it until it's done, and just see how we both.
I'm in. Count me in.
So yeah, we'll schedule that for 2025. It's in our schedules,
And we'll make a podcast about that, or
Yeah.
a video cast about that.
So so when you're doing, you said you do have character backgrounds and stuff like that. I'm assuming you've got a voice in your head. I mean, your characters don't sound like each other, not just audibly, but in the word choice and things like that. There are characters that are using certain words where other characters would never use those words because it's not even in their wheelhouse. And so how much of that is just your intuition of like, this character sounds like this, and how much of that is you intentionally going in and saying, I'm going to use these words to make him sound more nerdy or more street or more accountant like or more whatever.
That's one of my superpowers is taking a look at a character and knowing, making fun of them, knowing how they would talk, or knowing what they would say. I think I have a talent for that. So if you give me a photo, I can put a really good voice to it or a really good attitude to it.
Are you one of those people that used to play the game where you'd be watching people and you would start narrating what they're saying to each other?
Oh, I would follow them home, and inside their house would do that in a whisper voice. Nah, I know what you mean. No, I am too chicken to do that in real life because, yeah, you get caught doing that. No, I mean, I don't know. I guess a little bit. Everybody does that, but I don't know where it comes from. I can do that though. I can create a drawing and go, oh my gosh, this guy looks like he would be. This lady looks like she would work here and do this. And I think one of the things that just naturally, when I design characters, is in my mind, each one of them could have their own cartoon and be interesting. So I don't believe there's such a thing as a side character, because
Right.
Cory, there's no such thing as a side human. Okay, we're all starring in our own motion pictures, buddy. You remember that. So I really do believe that a side throwaway character are sometimes the most interesting characters that you can come up with.
Yeah.
I mean, it really, I think when there's a side, like when you're watching a sitcom and has a really horrible neighbor character or a really uninteresting character, I don't know how that happens. I mean, it's so, I don't know. That's just against my nature. I like that every character to be interesting, but every character doesn't demand the spotlight.
Yeah.
But they're interesting, and I just because that's how life is.
Yeah.
That's when
I
to
don't
grow.
think that's true. There are some truly uninteresting people out there, but
that's true. I didn't think about that. That kind of negates my point. You're right.
I don't know. I mean, to be honest, though, if you get to know people, everybody's got something interesting. So
yeah, but I really, it's the side characters have always been the most interesting to me. The side men and women in bands have always been the most interesting to me. I'm much more interested in a bass player usually than I am the lead singer. Much more interested in the henchman than I am the big boss. You know, I've always thought those side characters, the ones that don't usually get spotlighted, to me, are like the outcasts or whatever, are to me the most interesting characters. So that's kind of why everybody in my films could be like sort of have somewhat of an outcast usually.
Yeah.
Even the ones that aren't outcasts, the ones that are attention hogs and the ones that are super popular are still they have personality flaws, but that's what makes them interesting.
Yeah.
And the other thing too, they say write what you know.
Yeah.
I just said that. It actually is true. It is true because I've written stuff. I've come up with storylines, characters, plot lines, and then go back later and go, oh yeah, that kind of, I see where that came from.
Yeah.
And that happens on accident sometimes.
I think part of that is good, right? What you know. I also think that's really limiting in a lot of ways. I think if you understand that, what they're really saying is like, be authentic.
Yeah.
But I mean, otherwise we wouldn't have laser swords and dinosaurs riding around with missiles strapped to them or whatever, because who has seen any of those things?
But even within those stories, the authors are like, well, this strong character kind of reminds me of, my dad, and then his brother, Uncle Frank, who wore a trash can on his head.
Yeah. He was shaped very trash can like.
Uncle Darth.
I know that's what you're saying, but I just want to be clear for anybody listening. Like, the idea of write what you know does not mean, that you are relegated to your own life. It just means draw from what you know. And I do this professionally. I mean, when I'm marketing, when I'm doing a marketing campaign or something, I figure out who the target audience is, and then I need to get that person's voice in my head. So I will immerse myself in their world. I will whatever. And so when I can definitively say after that research, the audience feels like this because I have their voice in my mind by reading what they read and watching what they watch and hanging out with them and eating lunch with them and, discussing things online with them. And I mean, one of the more talked about stories in my career is when I was going to launch a ukulele line. I told everyone, I said, before we launch this line, we need to become ukulele players, and I'm not just talking about we need to learn to play the ukulele. And so I actually assigned my team to spend 30 to 60 minutes a day on ukulele discussion boards in forums doing that. And we started our own uke jam club where we'd get together every Thursday and like jam on the ukuleles. And we traveled to New York and to Tennessee and Nashville and all this different stuff to go to ukulele festivals, not as people trying to sell ukuleles, but just as people trying to enjoy that community. And so when we came back from that experience or those series of experiences and we were ready to launch our line, everybody on my team could definitively say, ukulele players feel like this. Ukulele players like actually don't like it when you say that, you know, they're not you know, or whatever. And so we get the ins and outs. And so I feel like that's a big, huge part of writing and dialogue is if everyone in your story is just a version of you, that can be a really boring story.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Right?
Wait, what are you saying? No, you're right. You're right. Yeah, write what you know does not mean like write your environment,
right.
But it does mean. I think it means if you're good at a certain type of banter, if you're good at a certain type of perspective, if you're good at a certain type of thing, make sure you incorporate that, because it's like if you were a musician and you were good at doing the James Brown scream, you're really good at it, then you might want to think about doing that a couple times, you know, on your album, because you're good at it, you know. So, but I don't know. I mean, I always feel like it's like write what you feel like writing, you know, write what excites you. Yeah,
and go expand your experience. Go listen. Like, this sounds super awkward, but creatives do weird things. So, you know, whatever. Go to a frozen yogurt place or a coffee shop or a bar and just eavesdrop on a bunch of conversations. And
it's just sitting at the table with them.
Yeah. And just like listen to how they say things and why they say things and when they say things and the pacing at which they say things and the responses that people have to people saying things, and just watch what happens, because there's a ton of stuff that we do that I feel like people don't really write down.
Yeah.
They're starting. It's like a lot of times, you know, people are not going to have like this super well thought out, intelligent response to something. They're going to say, yeah. Or they're going to say, I don't know, man, maybe, you know, or whatever. And so you just kind of do that. And Frank is saying creatives are so weird. And I completely agree. Creatives are very odd.
You creatives.
I know. But we were talking about that term the other day, how we only use the word creatives when we're talking to other creatives, because it sounds to the muggle world.
It sounds fun. I don't know. I've had friends who, you know, separate themselves as artists. Like, us artists we're different, and we're like, and I'm like, I'm of the perspective of everyone's an artist.
Yeah, I agree.
It's like everyone's a singer. There's just some people sing better than others. Some people draw better than others. Some people, you know, but it's like, I don't know. That's kind of, I always thought like to separate us as creative people is kind of, I don't know. I don't like to be elitist about it, but I know, I mean, that's picking small points, you know, I mean, because there are artists and there are people who don't explore that side of their, you know, personality, but everybody can be.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think everybody can, but there is something about those that choose to do it. But I also am one of those people that I really hate it. I mean, I come from a marketing background, and I find demographic and psychographic information to be so infuriating, because saying that an entire generation of people act like this and feel like this and do this, which is literally what I just said about ukulele players, but is so stupid, because you've got so many different individuals that are in all of those things. I mean, but if I were to say millennials, blah, 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 well, then why do we have war? Why do we have disagreements online? Why do we have, you know, political parties or whatever? It's because people are different, even if they're in the same demographic.
I'm just thinking of all the ukulele players that are pissed off at you right now.
I know, all 10 of them. Just kidding. It's
especially millennial ukulele players.
Millennial ukulele. Just if you want to make a ukulele player angry, just keep referring to their instrument as a tiny guitar. Just say it's such a cute tiny guitar.
or as a pukulele. They get really mad.
Okay, we've just coined a new phrase, the ukulenials. So
Scott Circlin, if you're listening, there's your new T-shirt.
Yep, the ukulenials. Actually, I think that would sell really well. Anyway, yeah, I think I don't know. Anything else you want to cover on Dialog?
It's funny. Somebody who usually doesn't write the dialogue out that thoroughly. I'm a co-host on the show that's doing about a dialogue. I like what we said about it's a mix of write what you know and write what excites you. So, there's Scott Circlin, he's on it. The ukulenials are actually the villains of my new cartoon, Boom Boom Ping.
Can I say that I now want to work in ukulenials into something like that? That's gotta
happen. Ukulenials. That's a good one.
So anyway, what was I'm sure whatever I forgot to say was going to be massively intelligent. No, what it was is I feel like we have once again arrived at this same place. The indie-mation conversation is going to be Jim and I at the beginning of the conversation saying, "Oh, look how different we are. We're on opposite sides of the spectrum," and then at the end we're like, "Oh, look at this nuance and balance between these two positions."
And then just getting burnt out and being like, "I don't know, whatever. Do what you want. I don't care. Whatever you want to do."
Yeah.
You look ukulenial.
Right, but if you want to, if you do want more tips and probably a more organized discussion on dialogue, go watch Scott Circlin's Making Comics 101 dialogue issue, because he had a bulleted list and didn't ramble for an hour.
Yeah, and by the way, if anyone's out there listening, send me some good examples of good animation writing, things that don't send me The Simpsons and Family Guy. I've seen all of those. Now send me something and some indie animation that you think has good writing. I'd be very curious. So you can post it in the comments here, and I'm always up for that.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a lot of really good stuff out there. Yeah, and it's good, and I love the idea of kind of reverse engineering and studying from other people who are doing stuff. And anyway, I've been talking a lot about stealing lately, and Austin Kleon's idea of steal like an artist, which he got from Pablo Picasso, is if you just steal from one person, you're a hack and probably in infringement of intellectual property and copyright. But if you learn from a bunch of different people, I mean, I've literally had students ask me this week, what if I want to just like make my style look like this guy's style? I'm like, well, that guy exists, so why do you need to exist if that's what you are? But if you like the way he does his line work, and you like the way that she does her colors, and you like the way that this other dude is doing this, and you like the way that this other lady's doing this or whatever, like take a little bit from everywhere and then you're good. And so I along with Jim, also want to just watch a ton of indie animation. So if you've seen good stuff out there, I'd love to see it, because I want to see how everybody's doing it. So
and also remember, you can boom, you can ping and boom, but you're always going to be a ukulenial at heart.
You are going to ruin the title of that before I'm done with this.
I'm sorry, that's terrible.
I've got 6 titles. That was my favorite one, and now I'm
just call it the ukulenials.
Ukulenials. It's going to be one of those things like Blade Runner, where it doesn't matter what the title is.
Yeah.
Cool. It has nothing to do with the story.
Yeah.
Ping Ping Boom actually does have something.
Do ukulenials dream of electric sheep?
There you go. I do have the other one is Indo-Exo.
What's that one?
Indo-Exo.
I like that. I do like that. That looks. I can already see the cool graphic.
See, everybody likes that one, and I don't like it as much.
Yeah, but because you know the behind the scenes of Ping Ping Boom, you already know like what that means. But if at first hearing, maybe it doesn't represent what it is. But it you know what though, it ultimately doesn't matter. It matters how good your product is, and then people will associate that with it. It'll you know. So,
Yeah.
but you are starting kind of an uphill thing.
Yeah, it doesn't. I don't know. At this point, it's a working title. It doesn't matter until I release something. But once I release something,
Ukulenial Boomers. That should be the title of it. Yeah.
I'm just gonna have There's gonna be an entire episode of people with C4 inside of ukuleles blowing things up, and it'll
and that's how the show gets, folks. After the 1 hour mark. So thank you. Should we wrap it? Should we wrap it?
We should have wrapped it 10 minutes ago.
Yeah, that's okay.
So if you want to check out Jim's stuff, go to jimluhan.com and it will automatically take you to his YouTube channel. Unless you're watching this in the future when Jim has gotten a real website like a real boy.
Yes. Not a Pinocchio fake site.
And if you want to see my stuff, you can go to corykerr.com. And we will be doing this every other week. So let us know in the comments what you guys want to talk about.
But not forever. So when we do quit, or when I'm replaced by a robot or ukulenial, know that I'm saying it now. Like, this was always meant to be a limited series, but we are totally enjoying it right now. So thank you. And thanks for everybody that's said nice things.
Yep. All right. We will catch you guys in a couple weeks.
Peace.